Hi, this is Bobby Brown, and welcome to another fucking podcast.
You kids with your loud music and your Dan Fogelberg, your Zima, hula hoops, and Pac-Man video games, don't you see? People today have attention spans that can only be measured in nanoseconds.
Hello, Hollywood. Hello, world. And hello, my loyal minions. It is good to see you, and as always, good to be seen. Izzy Presley here for an amazing edition of Under the Cover. Nah, it's not Under the Covers. I was messing with you again. Another effing podcast. I get my shows mixed up. I'm doing too many of them, but that's okay, because I want to do more. Oh, I want to do more. This show is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Of course, the great Babu will be here. He's got some more kind words for Packer fans. But of course, the big guest, and that's no pun intended. Big John Murray. You all know him from Rock of Love. He had a short-lived bail bond TV show, bounty hunter type stuff. We'll talk about that. Just wait till you hear this interview. Wow. Definitely one of the top 5 interviews I've ever done. Ever. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. Hey, if you want to check out the show, like online and stuff, Facebook.com/another effing podcast. Find it on Spreaker, which I know a lot of you are listening to right now. Spreaker.com/user/Izzy Presley. But also, this show, this Another Effing Podcast, is available on iTunes. So what you're going to do, here's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to go to iTunes, okay? You're going to go to iTunes, and you're going to subscribe on iTunes, and you're going to give me 5 stars. I know this show will get 5 stars. And you're going to leave feedback. You're also going to do this on Spreaker, and you're going to tell me how great the show is. Not how great I am, because I already know that, but how great the show is. And share it with your friends. And this one, you're going to want to share with your friends after you hear this interview, because John, well, he tells an amazing story that almost had me in tears, and I'm not talking laughing, I'm talking almost bawling, about being in a dark room with a gun. And it's, wow. He talks about his fight with drugs and alcohol. He talks about being on the show, talks about being a professional wrestler, which I did not know. I found that out before I did the interview, and we talked a lot about that, and I think you're really going to love his story. And he actually answered the question. I flat out asked him. I told him I was going to ask him, and I was goofing. He's like, I'll answer it. I'm like, all right, cool. Wig or bandana on Bret Michaels. He answers the question. The truth comes out tonight on Another Effing Podcast. But first, if you want to support the show, please also go follow on Spreaker. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes. And very importantly, if you want to support the show financially, there's a PayPal account. It's not free to put on. I need to pay for the program every month. I need to pay for internet. I need to pay for gear. It just is, upkeep and all that kind of stuff. PayPal is izzy.presley@gmail.com. You don't have to send money. You can. I would love it if you did, but you don't have to. I'm never going to charge for this show, ever. Ever. But if you want to help the show out, you are more than welcome, and it would be heartfelt. Thank you. Izzy.presley@gmail.com is the PayPal for that. Izzy.presley@gmail.com. Follow me on the Twitter, Izzy_Presley. You can also email the show at izzy@izzypresleyproductions.com. Go check out the website too. So, oh yeah, also check out the sponsor, Rockstar Leatherworks. Yeah, rockstarleatherworks.com. Handmade leather cuffs, watches, bands, all that kind of stuff. rockstarleatherworks.com. go do it. But because I'm going to be short on time because the John interview went long, and that's okay with me because I'm not editing any of it. It's all staying in. It runs as long as it has to run. So I think it's time to go to Wisconsin. Let's bring in the great Babu.
Please welcome, from parts unknown but making his home in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, weighing in at 749 pounds, he is the fantasy football guru of another fucking podcast, the great Babu Jam Bauer!
Break it down. Degenerate into something fool. We just got tired of doing what you told us to do. That's a break, boy. Yeah, that's a break, little man. Break it down.
And as you can tell by the music, means one and only thing. It is time to go to the center of Cheeseville, smack dab in the middle of the cheddar curtain for the great Babu. Mr. Jeff Bauer. Bobber, how are you, my friend?
I am doing good, although it's very chilly here right now.
Yeah, don't feel bad. It's cold out here. I got my space heater rolling in the room here.
It's all relative, I guess.
It's not Hoth-like like you have up there, but I'm not complaining too much. How is I have to invoke a new rule here for us. No more picking the Packers to get upset. Because every time you do that, they blow the fucking team out they're playing.
The weird thing is like Philadelphia had come in playing hot, and Green Bay is surprising me, and I'll admit that, because since they moved Clay Matthews to inside linebacker, it seems that defense has played better. I mean, Rodgers has been on fire. I mean, Jordy Nelson, he's looking like the second coming of Jerry Rice here, which is completely blowing my mind.
Yeah, I know. What's up with that?
Well, a lot of it is the Packers run a pretty good system in the fact that they pass the ball a lot, and if they don't complete the pass, they get pass interference called.
This is true.
And it's such a, like, could you imagine Randy Moss playing in the league with these rules, like if he was a rookie?
He would be automatically the greatest receiver of all time, bar none.
I mean, he would have had 30 touchdown seasons regularly.
Oh, absolutely. That might even be on the low end.
Yeah, and I get a kick out of it, but I do want to rant a bit about the Packer fans, and maybe that's part of the reason why I pick against them, is because I live in Wisconsin, and I have to deal with these a-holes. And I'm going to give you a little example. It's Monday, I'm at work, okay, and I'm in the lunchroom. And everybody there loves the Packers, which is cool. You grew up in Wisconsin, you should support your local team. I get that. But this is something that bothers the shit out of me, okay? So he was asking me about the game, and he's like, oh, did you watch the game last night? I said, yeah, the Packers looked really good. Rodgers looked good. And he's like, yeah, it's a great time to be an owner.
Oh, no.
I said, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm an owner. I said, an owner of what? And he's like, the Packers. And I'm like, no, you're not. He goes, yeah, I am. I'm a shareholder. I said, you bought a useless piece of paper for $200. That's all it means. If you think you're an owner, you're an idiot. Because you make no decisions on personnel.
Right.
What are you going to do? Call your buddy up, Fred, at the bar and say, I think we should release this guy? No. It's a stupid piece of paper. And I don't get why people, they release these to the public,
Yeah.
And they'll buy them up like $1,000 or $2,000 at a shot at $200 a piece.
Because it's all they have.
That's probably, I agree with that, but to think that the fact that got put in a conversation, like it's a good time to be an owner, like, are you profiting from this or what?
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, think about it. You live there. Are the Bucks a statewide phenom?
Oh yeah,
the Bucks are.
Yeah, the Bucks. They just haven't been good for a while, but people talk about them. Wisconsin's a pretty big sports area. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the teams that they have, they support actually pretty well. I mean, they're not. Nothing's like the Packers. I mean,
Right.
it's really ridiculous. This the kind of stuff that you hear, and like when they do good, I'm just like, oh, geez. It's, I mean, it really is. I mean, people are more excited. People are happier. They're out spending money, and basically, they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't even know why we're playing the rest of the games this week and the rest of the year. I mean, it makes no sense to me.
Well, because Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback of all time, bar none.
You know, Rodgers is very good. I'm not going to
Yeah.
take that away from him, but they're actually getting hot at the wrong time
Right.
because they will probably peak in a week or two. And next week, New England comes to town. That'll be an interesting game
Mm-hmm.
because New England doesn't get slapped around by pretty much anybody. And they're a cold weather team. They play well in the cold weather. And I think that'll be an interesting game. Like I said, this week is a really weird week because there's a lot of good games. I don't see a lot of real upset picks out there. I hate to burst your bubble, but there's no way the Vikings are beating the Packers.
No. I think we can agree on that fact, unless hell freezes over.
Well, the thing that's odd is I thought the Vikings would have a better defense with Zimmer and stuff.
Right.
And it hasn't. Anthony Barr has been great,
Mhm.
but some of these other players, they just don't look like they're cohesive. They're on the same team. You know what I'm saying?
You watched the Bears game, and you had oversized receivers on undersized corners. I mean, and you saw it every time that Cutler threw the ball. It was to the guy that you started against me when you blew me out. Fucker. You picked him up just for that week, didn't you?
Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah. Or did you have him?
He was like my highest wide receiver I
Oh,
drafted.
I did not know that. All right, I take that back.
He's had an awful year.
But yeah, I mean, you saw it on every play. They just throw it high, the receiver would go up and get it, and there's nothing the DB could do about it.
Yeah, and that's the way the NFL is nowadays.
Right.
You know, that's why
Right.
you're seeing Seattle get put back down to earth. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, it's a copycat league,
Yes.
and if you don't have a quarterback and wide receivers, you are not going to be a very good team.
And, of course, big news out of Minnesota that Mr. Peterson will not be playing at all this year. Thankfully, that waiver request that I put in for that didn't go through. What are you hearing as what's going to happen with him with the Vikings? I was listening to K-Fan today, and there's some speculation that there's still a chance that the Vikings may keep him next year at a reduced salary. I mean, they're not going to pay him the $18 million he has coming, but they think that he's such a major part of that team and major part of that community that they may cut that salary down and bring him back. What are your thoughts, and what are you hearing?
Well, I don't think this is a done deal yet. I think this is Adrian Peterson's being made the scapegoat for the NFL's conduct policy.
True.
And he got a misdemeanor. I mean, he's basically been suspended a whole year. What are the precedents you see in sports? If this happens last year, when you don't have all the stuff with Ray Rice,
Right.
and we don't have all the stuff with all these other guys, I bet he doesn't even get suspended.
Well, I think it's a combination of two things. I think it's the thing with Ray Rice, and I think it's a combination of that and Budweiser coming down saying, we're going to drop you if you don't do something.
Yeah, and Adrian Peterson has shown no remorse for it
Right.
in terms of saying he's going to still discipline his kid and he's going to do this. And, like, we all know that Adrian Peterson was not a Rhodes Scholar.
Right.
I mean, he's not doing math theorems in his spare time,
Right.
But on the flip side is like, even the most stupid person would realize I got to change a little bit here.
Yeah, this is true.
And the NFL is big business. It's corporate business. It's like you mentioned Budweiser. You even look at like Radisson
Yeah.
in Minneapolis, It sets a bad precedent when you got your players wearing all these pink stuff for breast cancer awareness, but
Mhm.
yet you have players that are openly beating their girlfriends and women, and then you're okay with it. But I think people need to step back a little bit here because ultimately we're talking about football players here.
Yep.
These are people who have been trained. It's almost like a pit bull in a sense.
That's
to
true.
attack and to be physical with other people. And for them just to Sunday's over, just to shut that off, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, it's tough. And the thing is like no matter what happens, it continues to happen. Didn't it just happen a couple weeks ago with the guy from the Cowboys?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah,
And
it's unfortunate.
And it's also something that, like, the way these people are trained, the way they're paid, it's really kind of a meat market in terms of, when you can't play, you're done. We're cutting you, and you're not getting your salary.
Oh, that's absolutely true. And then these guys, they don't save their money, and I mean, thankfully they have the pension like they didn't have. Back in the days of Butkus and before that, I mean, they got that pension now. So you play in the league a few years, you're gonna be set up for a while. But yeah, I mean, these guys don't save their money.
No, and it's very, like, a lot of these guys come from rough backgrounds. I mean, it's I just thought it was funny. I was watching the Colts New England game on Sunday, and how they do the starting lineups on Sunday Night Football, they say their name and their college and everything,
Yep.
The first guy that pops up is like Andrew Luck, quarterback, Stanford. He says it real clear. And the next guy is Trent Richardson from Alabama. And it's just like, you can just tell that guy, I don't even think he's finished sixth grade. I would not. And it's just like, he's looking cross-eyed into the camera. And, it's funny how many different parts of a football team there is, and yet how really different they are.
Oh, it's absolutely true. It really is. Leaning into the fantasy aspect of this upcoming week, what do you like? What do you don't like? Who should you avoid? All that good stuff. You know the drill.
Well, this is the first week I'm going to say this is Eddie Lacy is a good start. He still is not putting up good numbers in terms of rushing the ball. Like, they scored 50 points and he had 60 rushing yards, which isn't phenomenal. But obviously he's definitely one of the top plays this week. Any one that you have with Green Bay playing against the Vikings, I hate to say it, but you want to play Jordy Nelson, you want to play Randall Cobb, you want to play Aaron Rodgers, you probably even want to play the Vikings, not the Vikings, but the Packers defense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys are jumping on this Jonas Gray guy from New England who had almost 200 yards rushing and what did he have, 4 touchdowns?
Yeah, something like that.
Or Sunday, I mean. I would temper your expectations with him a little bit. I'm not saying don't go out and pick him up, but they play Detroit this week.
Yes.
And Detroit has a very good run defense. He's not having that type of game. If New England's going to beat Detroit in that game, it's going to be through the air. And I don't see this Jonas Gray guy having much of a week at all. I do have an interesting pickup for you. You're probably going to laugh at me when I tell you this, but
okay.
Josh McCown, the quarterback for Tampa Bay.
Okay.
Since he's been reinserted back in the starter, both him and Mike Evans, the wide receiver, have been just putting up monster numbers.
Really?
And yeah, they have. And if you need something for a quarterback for a bye week, there's not a lot of teams on bye this week. It is just I believe it's just the Panthers and the Steelers. So Brad will be crying all day Sunday because the Steelers aren't on. Hopefully, maybe he's replaying the Green Bay Steelers Super Bowl that they lost. So, but yeah, it's an interesting week. The Panthers and Steelers are off, and there's a lot of good games this week. The Lions, the Patriots, Packers, and the Vikings is always interesting. It'll be in Minnesota.
Yep.
So the crowd will be high.
The first Vikings Packers game in Minnesota outside since 79 or 80? Oh, 81. Be 81, correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right when the Metrodome was built.
Yeah, it opened in 82. That's right.
Yeah, it's funny when you think back to that. The old Met Stadium. Now there's a shopping mall there.
I know, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Bobber, we are running out of time. Any last words for all the Packer fans out there that are just growing to love you so much?
Oh, I hate you.
I hate you. Die.
I hate all Packer fans, and it's just like, you see these people, this is a big pet peeve of mine too. People that I went to high school with and grew up with, who they might have married a girl from Wisconsin or something. Now they're these huge Packer fans.
Oh, I know. Wait, who that I know? Because I want to call them out.
I'm not going to say it.
Say it.
But you know what I think is funny?
Oh, you can't lay that on the line and not say it. Call him out, baby. That's what this is all about.
Jason Schindler.
Jason Schindler. Okay, that doesn't shock me.
Really?
No, it just doesn't. I don't know why, but it doesn't shock me at all.
I guess maybe, but like, you know, I remember these guys. They were big Vikings fans and stuff like that. But I look at my Facebook feed on Saturday, and I couldn't believe all these people that were tweeting about going to the Minnesota Gophers football game because they were actually ranked in the top 25. Like maybe the first time since Roosevelt's been president. And it's funny because then all of a sudden it got quiet again after they lost. You know, it's just like, oh, I just wish Minnesota fans were a little bit more sturdy than that, you know?
Yeah, but then again, you have to deal with Packer fans with the only comeback they have for anything is 13 world championships. Well, how many were those for Super Bowls though? You know?
Yeah, but you know what I say to that? What wrestler in the WWE has the most titles? Has won the most the title?
John Cena. No, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it's John
It
Cena.
is John Cena, yeah.
Oh.
More than Ric Flair, more than Hulk Hogan, more than...
No. Flair still has 16.
Oh, Cena's got more than that.
Cena's a 15-time world champion, and that's why I said the day that Cena wins number 16, Ric Flair is going to roll over in his grave, and he's not even dead yet. Bobber, we'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Have a good one.
All right, later, brother. Of course, you can find him on the social media at facebook.com/another effing podcast, fantasy football guru, and get him on Twitter at AFPFF Guru. That's AFPFF Guru. All right. I'm going to take a short 30-second break, and then when I come back, I will have from the Rock of Love, from the Monsters of Rock Cruise, my close personal friend, Big John Murray, will be joining me right after this. RockstarLeatherworks.com is your home for badass rock and roll gear. Featuring 100% handmade leather bands, watches, cuffs, bracelets, and more, Rockstar Leatherworks has something for everybody. Whether you are going to the show or you are in it, you can find something to fit your needs. Choose from a variety of designs or create your own masterpiece. Their bands and watches are second to none. They also ship internationally. Who needs a stage to be a rock star? Check out rockstarleatherworks.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to bring in the featured guest for the evening, a man who I have a bone to pick with. And I'm going to get into that in a second, but I am proud to welcome, finally, I didn't even know this, I have my first former professional wrestler on the show. You know him from Rock of Love. And, of course, all the Monsters of Rock cruisers know him from the boat. Big John, it is great to finally have you on, man.
Izzy, thank you so much, brother. It's been a long time coming. We've known each other for a long time, and we've always talked about it, but it just never happened. And
exactly.
Luckily, I heard AJ, so I got to keep up with AJ and
yeah, exactly,
and Jeff, and make sure that I keep up with them.
Well, you know, it goes back to that point where when I get so rich and famous that I need my own personal security, you and AJ are going to be my fucking road warriors.
That's perfect. You know? That's perfect. You got me, AJ, and Jake. We're Cerberus.
That's right, Jake. Jake's going to be the what the fuck is the road warriors manager now? I can't even think of him. Precious Paul. Yes.
Ellering.
Yeah, Paul Ellering.
That's right.
Yes, that's right. All right. First though, my bone to pick with you.
Oh, God.
You were working with Poison in 2002, correct?
I don't. At that time, I was probably either with. I may have been. At that time, I was with Saliva with Larry Morand, and I was going back and forth between Saliva, and I think Poison at that time.
Did you do the Poison Cinderella Pussycat Winger tour, the VH1 tour?
No.
All right.
I was.
All right. You're free and clear then.
I got to hear the story though. What happened?
Okay, my buddy's a Poison wonk. Loves him, and he's part of the fan club and all that stuff. So he paid the money to do the meet and greet.
Actually, I take that back. I was on that.
All right, then it was you.
It just clicked because that's how me and Tammy got really close.
Oh, okay. It was June 16th, Father's Day, Duluth, Minnesota, and my buddy had his his meet and greet thing because he was part of the fan club,
Okay.
and I just had a ticket. And after the show, there was some dude walking around outside or walking around the venue on the main floor with a stack of passes, handing them to women, which was, I'm assuming was you.
That would have been me.
That would have been you. I'm like, dude, my buddy's got the VIP thing. He's back there. I just want to go hang out with my buddy. You look at me and go, no.
Oh God, I probably did. You know
Yeah.
what? I at that time it was still fairly new to me to be out with Poison and walking around, hanging out with a bunch of passes and deciding which chicks go where. And
Right.
you know, when you're young, I wasn't young, but when you're new to that whole scene and that organization, it becomes a little bit not overwhelming. You get a little bit of an ego. It's like,
Oh,
hell yeah, I
absolutely.
get to pick you, and I get to pick you, and you're going to be back there, and I'm hoping to God, maybe even I get a chance, you
Well,
know.
absolutely.
But yeah, you know, if I disrespected your friend in any way, I can truly say now I'm so sorry.
No, you disrespected me.
Oh, that's even worse.
I had to go wait in the truck and wait for him for like an
God.
hour and a half. Luckily,
God.
I had a box of baseball cards that I was just opening up, bored, listening to
Well,
the radio.
I
Thankfully, it was
truly
June,
say
so it
I'm
was
so
warm.
sorry,
No,
because
dude, it's all
it's,
good.
you know, like I said, it just gets, you know the deal. You've seen
Yeah.
the shows, and
Absolutely.
you kind of get carried away, and you feel like you got all this power, and
Yep.
and in actuality, it's not you that the people even give a shit about.
Right.
It's what you have in your hands.
Yep.
So, by the way, am I allowed to say that? Give a shit about?
You can say anything you fucking want.
Okay, cool.
I mean, it is called Another Fucking Podcast, so
Okay, good.
absolutely.
Good, good.
So I didn't know you were a wrestler.
Yeah, it was a very short-lived career. I trained here in Cincinnati for the HWA. It's a Heartland Wrestling Association, and a guy named Les Thatcher, who was instrumental in back in the old days with Vern Cogney. I think that's how you say his name, and a lot of the older wrestlers, Ric Flair, and some of them. He opened up one of the premier wrestling schools here in the Eastern region, and one of the guys here, Lance, who's a promoter, and he lives out in Vegas now. He got me involved in the whole thing. And long story short, I went for about a year and a half, wound up hurting my neck, met a lot of people, did a lot of cool things with the ECW and WWF wrestlers, WWE at the time. No, it was WWF.
It was WWF at the time, yeah.
We did this thing for a local guy here, Brian Pillman, who was huge in
familiar.
wrestling. And after he passed away, we did these what we called the Brian Pillman Memorials. We brought in a lot of the headliners and national names and well-known people, and a lot of all the monies collected went to the Brian Pillman Memorial for his family and everything. But then I had a neck injury that prevented me. It physically wouldn't have prevented me. It was more mentally. I got really gun shy, and I was like, I'd heard horror stories and a lot. Even some of the people today that I had the pleasure of working with and getting to know are now paralyzed, or they're not walking right. Their bodies are, and I just got really scared because I had other dreams and aspirations and ambitions, and I'm like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a chair.
Right.
And I got back in the ring a few months later after this neck injury. It was basically long story short, it was a compression fracture on my neck. Nothing where I was paralyzed or anything like that. But it turned out that I got back in the ring and I was just scared to even move. It psychologically took a toll on me, and I was like, I'm done. If I can't do it, I don't want to even be in the ring. So,
Right. Well, it's funny that you mentioned Brian Pillman, because I was actually at his very last match.
Oh, were you really?
It was in St. Paul, and he was fighting. I can't remember who he was fighting, but it was when Austin had his fucking neck thing.
Yeah.
And so Austin was just hanging outside of the ring. And I can't remember I think he was with Pillman, or I can't remember who the hell he was fighting. But yeah, it was that night that Pillman died.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. It was in Minnesota. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't know what caused that. I don't know. There's still a lot of or controversy and speculation as to how he died, and that's none of my business. I just know that we both grew up in this little town in Cincinnati called Norwood, and I knew him growing up. He was a few years older than me, but I knew him growing up. I knew who he was. Hell of a football player. and I kind of like tried to follow in his steps. I figured if I'm from Norwood, what can I use as an inspiration? And I watched Brian, and I went back and watched some of his matches, and I was like, if I could make that kind of impression on people, I can do this, especially with my size and everything. So I kind of went a little bit apeshit in the ring and wanted to do all the crazy stuff, and inevitably it wound up snapping my neck.
How did that happen?
I had a guy do a reverse DDT on me in the ring, and in the world of sports entertainment, there's kind of a release.
Hold it. Time out. That's the only swear word you're not allowed to use on this show is sports entertainment. It's professional fucking wrestling. Thank you. All right, continue.
Well, what you do is when you do a reverse DDT, you kind of release and you don't hold as hard like you would if you're trying to break somebody's neck.
Right.
And another young guy made a mistake and he didn't release quick enough, and I wound up landing on the top of my head, and it literally just pushed my neck in like a shock absorber, and I knew immediately what happened. And I tried to I just rolled out of the ring, and I think it was the next day I tried to put up with it, thinking maybe I just ripped some muscles or tore some muscles. The next day I was laying on the floor and wound up being transported to the hospital, and they were like, yeah, you have a compression fracture in your neck. And I walked around with those cervical collars for a few weeks and got stubborn and took it off, and probably did more damage because it still hurts to this day, but I don't let it bother me as much.
Was that in ECW when that happened?
No. That's still with the HWA.
Oh, okay. How much stuff did you do with ECW? Because I'm enthralled by ECW. I loved ECW.
The weird thing is I did more afterwards.
Okay.
I got to know Bubba Ray and Devon and all those guys, and I did do some, like, not even appearances because I wasn't even really known.
Right.
It was just one of those things where there were some matches that happened, and I got to be involved in somehow. And, got to go through a few tables and stuff like that. They were all house matches, so it was never really televised. I did get a chance to go up to, East Philadelphia, where the ECW arena was. And this is all after I got into the music business.
Really?
And Brett had at that time, Brett had a real problem with Brett Michaels had a real problem as to whether I wanted to go back into wrestling. And it created quite a conflict, because I made more of I had made more of an attachment with the ECW guys, of all people, the ECW guys, through music. And I figured, okay, if I'm not getting a push through this way, later on down the line, as I started to meet these people, I was like, I'm going to go in the back door. Right. And Edge and Bubba Ray and Devon and everybody, we had all this stuff planned. And then I went back to Cincinnati and I was training, and the neck thing happened. So, I mean, I didn't do a whole lot. I mean, it was never like a title holder or anything like that, but there were a few dark matches and stuff like that.
I was curious. I saw that because I was doing a little research for once, and I came across an interview. I'm like, ECW. And of course, I went straight to YouTube, and there's nothing. I'm like, come on, what was his gimmick? What was his gimmick? No pictures, nothing.
You know what it was? It was basically the Undertaker on extreme levels. You know what I mean?
Okay.
My hair was longer, and I looked kind of goofy. It just never got the heat, and I never got the heat and the push. And I kind of started to live. It was weird. I started to live the character.
Okay.
So I started to piss off a lot of people in reality. And, once again, young and stupid and vulnerable. And I thought that if I lived the character, it would get more of a push.
Right.
And inevitably what I wound up doing was pissing off a lot of people. And, when the neck thing happened, I started thinking, is this really what I want to do the rest of my life? So luckily Larry Moran came into the picture, and the guys from Cinderella, and everything changed.
Yeah, exactly. How did that happen? How did you make that jump? And God bless Larry Moran. I'm sorry, let me bless Larry Moran.
Being here in Cincinnati, I was working at a nightclub called Annie's, and it was a live event complex. And Rat and Cinderella and Winger and all these guys, especially, Warrant and Janie. That's how I got to meet Janie, God rest his soul. They would all come through and they would play. And I kept seeing this same guy over and over who was the tour manager. And eventually I got the nerve up, and somebody had introduced us, and they're like, hey, this is Larry. And I got to know Larry, you know, through the telephone and keeping in touch with him. And I was one of those guys that I hated when I finally wound up working in the music business, who was always there and always like up their ass and causing, you know, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? But eventually it paid off because Larry was very, very helpful and instrumental, because I would show up, and he actually gave me my first laminate since Cinderella was in town. And this is right after Eric had his wreck. And, you know, I'd go up to the door. You know, the show isn't till tomorrow night, but I'd see the bus, and I'd go up to the door and knock on the bus door. Jeff would answer the bus.
Oh, Jeff.
He's like, hello. I'm like, hey, Jeff. Hey, Big John. What are you doing here? I'm like, hey, can I come up and hang? So they watched me, you know, and they were always very hospitable and bring me up on a bus and how you doing and asking everything. And what I did was basically it's one of those things when you want a job so bad, if you call enough, they start to think, oh shit, who's knocking at the door? Is it John again? Oh shit, is that John? Oh shit.
Yep.
And then a friendship really built off of it, which I didn't expect. And Fred Curry invited me down to Nashville for a weekend one time, and me, Fred, and Jeff went out, and this friendship started to really build. And then, you know, Larry was like, okay, you know, he was kind of like teaching me. It was like Larry Moran 101. Here's what you do. You know, I'm going to give you a laminate. I just want you to watch the guys, help them get here, do this, do that. And at the time, I didn't know it, but what he was doing was kind of like giving me a crash course. I don't even think he realized it, because nobody knew what the future was going to hold.
Right.
And then I got a call from Larry Moran, and he was out with Rat, Cinderella, Great White, and LA Guns in 99 and 98 or 99. I can't remember. And they were up in Cleveland, which is about a 4-hour drive. And I went up to Cleveland, and I'm hanging out and just, you know, doing my thing and saying hi to everybody. And over the years, I got to be good friends with Bobby Blotzer from Rat. And Bobby wanted to ride back to the hotel, so I had a friend of mine give him a ride back to the hotel. Bobby says, just ride the bus back. Well, dumb shit me. I'm thinking, okay, cool. This is going to be cool. I'll get to get on the bus again. And I wound up on the crew bus. And the band bus went back to the hotel. The crew bus wound up in Detroit.
Oh, no.
So we're driving for like 3 hours. I'm like, where the hell is this hotel? And everybody looks at me like, what hotel, dude? We're in Detroit. And that's when it began. I called Larry and I said, dude, I don't know what the hell to do. I said, I'm in Detroit. And he goes, what the hell are you doing in Detroit? And he goes, well, listen, here's the deal. He goes, we got a show in Cincinnati in like 2 weeks. He goes, I can get you back to Cincinnati. He goes, in the meantime, you know, make yourself sparse, go work with the crew, do, you know, help out. And I think he knew at that point how bad I wanted it. So it was kind of like, make yourself visible, but sparse.
Right.
And about 2 days later, Warren DeMartini, Larry, and Steven and Bobby pulled me aside and they said, do you want a job? That was it. I called home. I was, at that time, I was working in a juvenile detention facility.
Okay.
Mini prison. And I called back and I said, look, I'm never coming back. My uniforms will be sent to you. And I made a life-changing decision, and here I am today. Yeah,
you never looked back. And then how did you end up with Poison? Where does that?
Actually, it all stemmed from that tour.
Okay.
Throughout that tour in 98, 99, I'll never forget it. We were in Evansville, Indiana, and me and Tracy Guns the crew was setting up the stage, and this is this is a story you can't buy. Me and Tracy Guns, I guess we were sitting out there, and Tracy had a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I'm sitting on the cage, and as the crew, you know, you don't want to be showing the side of it. I didn't know that, but Tracy handed me the bottle, and I'm sitting there swigging on it, and Brett walks by. He goes, oh yeah, that's great. You know, so I kind of that was my first interaction with Brett. And then throughout that tour, I was like, holy shit, that's Brett, you know, and he just saw me drinking. I'm never gonna when that tour was over with, I was supposed to go to Japan with Rat. Steven had blown out his knee and everything, so everything had fallen apart. That tour got canceled. So I got the, I guess, initiative or the idea to call Brett's people or Poison's people. And I said, hey, this is John. I had met Rob Stevenson at that time, was a security and their inevitably became their tour manager. And I called Rob and Ricky Rocket, who I was really close to. And I said, I'm looking for a job. And bang, like within 24 hours, the phone rang and said, hey, we're starting a tour in May. You're going to be working with Ricky. You're going to be his personal assistant. You're going to learn. And Rob said, you're going to learn this business. I'm going to teach you. And he goes, you have a long career ahead of you. So hence the Poison thing started. And that was the introduction to a whole different world.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And okay, now how far into it did the TV show come? Because my dates are escaping me now. I just know it happened somewhere down the line.
We started filming that TV show in 2006.
Okay,
2007.
yeah, that sounds right.
So it was there was a good transition.
Okay.
And I'm happy it didn't happen right away, because I would have been a bumbling idiot.
Right.
Not that I wasn't anyway. But throughout the next 5 or 6 years, I got to, because of Larry, and I keep saying Larry because Larry has been very instrumental in everything that happened to me. I mean, without Larry Moran, this never would have happened. Larry had picked up a band out of Memphis, Saliva, and he called me. He said, hey, how quick can you be in Saliva? I want you to meet these guys, and I want them to meet you and see if there's a chemistry there. Immediately, I got down there, whatever you need. I drove down there, met the band, clicked with every one of them. And ironically, a few months later, it was the first time that I ever got fired, because that was the beginning of a very, very bad road that I didn't want to go down.
Okay.
I think I spent like a year with them, a little bit over a year. And we went from Saliva, Nickelback, Fuel, and Three Doors Down being over in Europe to doing the MTV Campus Invasion Tour. And then we wound up with Godsmack, and it all went bad. And I was basically told I wasn't allowed in the venues anymore. And Larry went and, it got bad. There was one night, I think we were in Maine. This was right after 2011, September 11, 2011. And we postponed a lot of the shows because of that. So the first show back, Saliva's opening up, and me and Josie and a couple of guys were having some adult beverages.
By accident.
Sully had called for Josie to come up on stage with him. Well, because I was attached to the hip of Josie, dumbass me went out on the stage with them. And nobody knows who the hell I am. And I'm standing there looking like a big gorilla. And their security guy, I can't even remember his name, basically got into my face, and I don't care how new or how young I was, I still have my past and the Marine Corps and everything else. And I was like, I don't give a fuck who you are. You're not going to talk to me that way. And
I was an ECW, bitch.
I was a wrestler. No, it was just, it went really bad one night. And even the promoter and everybody, they were in the back taking bets with Larry. I'll bet John wins. Look, here's the deal. I'll put this up. I'll bet John wins. This is going to go down. And the next day, it was one of those things that Larry had no other choice. He's like, listen, he goes, go home. We'll call you back out when we're done with Godsmack. And deep down inside, I knew that it was never gonna, I was never gonna call back. And it was probably the best thing, because that's when I got introduced, during that whole time period, when I got introduced to cocaine. And it went very, very bad.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Oh, yes, it is. And Larry, you could see that Larry was not looking back in hindsight. I could see that Larry was not so much separating himself, but he was standing back watching. He had a few talks with me. He said, look, you can't do this. I was too stubborn to listen. He was trying to guide me in the right direction. And unfortunately, I played fifth Beatle and continued to get completely tore up. And it was a great learning experience, but it's something that I wouldn't change it for the world. I had fun with the guys, but I got to experience it and get it out of the way.
No regrets.
So, no, absolutely none.
And
other than getting fired.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But you're clean and sober now, correct?
I am. 3 years, over 3 years. I made a promise to my wife 3 years ago. It was one of those things where the drinking took a very hard stance in my life, because what happened was 6 years ago, I was doing CPR on my father. I did. Let me backtrack. I never
Okay, go
believed
for
in, I never believed in PTSD. I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was a bullshit excuse for everything, and a way to get free money
Right.
from the government. Well, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and after his body had finally given out, I was doing CPR on him. And the weird thing is that every time I did a compression on his chest, it was boom. And it literally, that's exactly what I would hear. Boom. And I was back in the Marines, and there were a few situations while I was in the Marines that was necessary. And we were in Somalia, and we were in the Gulf War, and we were here in Cuba and everything else. And all of a sudden, all this stuff started to just come back over me that I had forgotten. And that's when the drugs were gone, but that's when the drinking became really, really bad. I mean, and I was up to near the end, I was up to about a half a gallon of Jim Beam a day.
Holy shit.
And, everybody saw it.
Right.
I can remember Jeff LeBar and Fred and Larry and Brett and everybody looking at me going, "You okay?" "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." And everybody saw what was happening to me, except for me.
Right.
And this took about 4 years, 3-4 years for me to finally, it got so bad that I'll never forget this, Memorial Day weekend, May 28th, 2010, I was in Salt Lake City. Nobody knows this, or maybe a few people know this. I sat in a dark room about 3 a.m. and put a pistol in my mouth. And I cocked it and I said, "Okay, Dad." I was like, I sat there for a minute contemplating. And I had seen and done it all. The Rock of Love and everything was already done. And that made it even worse because then everybody wanted to party with you.
Well, of course.
And I got into such a hole that I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I don't want it anymore. And I put a pistol in my mouth and I sat there and thought about it for a minute. And I said, "Okay, Dad, you got 24 hours to prove to me or give me a sign or something, show me why I'm here and why I should be here." And I'll be damned if the next day I didn't meet what is now the woman that is now my wife. And I kind of knew right away. I was like, "Holy shit." And I made her a promise the next October or the following October that I said, "Look," I said, "I'll make a deal with you." I said, "I will never, ever drink again if you can just give me one more chance," because I put her through hell. And she said, "Okay." She goes, "But the minute you break your promise, we're done." Because she saw the worst of me. And we're still together. So
hey, let me bless that. Not to go back to that particular dark room, but what was it that stopped you?
What was it that stopped me drinking or stopped me from shooting myself?
Stopped you from shooting yourself. What made you realize, fuck, I can't do this?
You know what? I have no idea. I don't know what stopped me. I was in such a deep, dark hole that I literally had this thing in my mouth, and I'm just sitting there. And I think it was the thought of, what if I fuck up? What if this doesn't work? It was almost like there was something that was pushing against my hand to get it back out of my mouth.
Okay.
But that sounds like a porno. Gay porn 101.
Oh my God, I go from
get it out of my mouth.
I literally just went from the brink of almost crying to laughing my ass off.
It's the story of my life, dude.
Oh my God.
The greatest thing is I'll make humor out of it now because yes, it was a deep, dark place, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it. I mean, I hope I have a story that I know that there's 1,000,001 people out there, especially veterans today, and everybody. I mean, they're killing themselves 22 a day.
Right.
I have a story where I was a hair pull away of a trigger to ending it all, to turning around and living. I wouldn't change anything for the world.
Right.
Because that night it was just, I had gotten to a point where you just don't see the end of the tunnel. There's nothing. It's just pure black. And the drugs and the alcohol. And like I said, the cocaine and everything didn't stop when I got fired. I mean, it just wasn't as prevalent.
Okay.
It was still in my life.
Right.
There was this and that, and you hand it to me, I'd take it. I mean, fuck, I was working for Kid Rock for 3.5 years. You could imagine the amounts of coke that was laying around. It
Right.
just happened to disappear. But you know, and it was one of those things where he had no problem with, when the show was over, drink, have fun, you know,
Right.
because I wasn't security. I was just his assistant. So, you know, I'd sit there in the mask. Hey, can I have a beer? And he goes, you don't have to ask me, John. Quit asking me. Drink.
Right.
He's like, as a matter of fact, if you don't have like 3 shots in 5 minutes, you're fired. I'm like, great. Now I'm going to lose my job for not drinking. And
Right.
but no, you know, you get to this point where there just seems like there's no way out. You're running in a circular room, and what stopped me that night? The only thing that I can think of is my dream was to work in the music business. Thanks to Cinderella and Rat and all that, I had that opportunity. And thanks to Brett, I was on TV and I got to be somewhat famous. You know, people knew who I was everywhere I went. But there comes a point in time where that's just not enough.
Right.
And you want more.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's funny. Jeff was talking on his with you about, I've never done heroin, but when Jeff was talking about, you get to the point where you got to do more and more and more and more to keep up. That's how it was with the quote unquote celebrity and the fame. And the minute it starts to slack off, you feel like you're not important anymore.
Right.
And it's like, well, fuck it. What's left?
Right. Yeah.
So,
It's almost like a drug upon itself.
yeah. And it's weird because during that whole time, I didn't realize it until now, looking back. Some of the closest people and the people that meant the most to me, Larry, Jeff, Fred, everybody, the guys from Rat, I became a little egotistical son of a bitch. I drank the Kool-Aid and I turned into somebody I didn't. And I've spent the last probably 3 years apologizing to people, saying, hey, if I did anything or said anything when I was back then, I'm sorry. And you'd be surprised how many people would say, yeah, you know, this happened or that happened, but we knew that wasn't you. We knew the real you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you know. So
do you think how much do you think the TV show turned you into something that you weren't? I mean, were you trying to portray
100%.
Were you trying to portray what I'm not gonna lie, I think I watched 2 episodes of that show. I couldn't stand it. I think that was the first thing I said to you. I remember the first time I met you on the first cruise. Like, hey man, I'm Izzy, Rockin' 101. I'm not gonna lie, I fucking couldn't stand that show. You know? I think that was the first thing I said to you. And so I'm not familiar with it. I mean, so I don't really know what you were on that show.
I was in the Sopranos world. I was the muscle. You know what I mean?
Yep.
What I did was basically I was Brett's bitch. I was Brett's bitch who took care of the bitches. And I didn't try to portray anything. I tried to be as real to who I am as I could be, but reality television isn't always reality.
Yeah,
and the
I think we all
producers
know
and
that,
directors want something else. And so I tried to incorporate as much as myself as possible. But when you got 15 different people who have the show going in one direction, then you got Brett who wants it to go in his direction, and then you got me who's starting to become a little bit more visible, and then everybody starts worrying, wait a minute, why is John in this so much? Get John out of the picture.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what the fuck? 2 minutes ago, somebody told me to stand here.
Right.
So then I start arguing, you know, and I'm like, look, if you want me on the show, great. If you don't, I mean, there were a lot of times when I got very arrogant and pissed off at like the producers and the filming crew and stuff. And did I have a reason to? Probably not. But because I was so attached to Brett and I drank the Kool-Aid, if he was there, I should be there.
Right.
You know, and I'm thinking on a road touring basis, you know, and does Brett need 24-hour security? No, nor does anyone, you know, I don't see that. But I took my job very serious, and I got to a point where some of the biggest people in the business who are producers and road managers and production managers, I made a very good impression with a lot of people, and just because of my work ethic, and that's what I stuck by. And then when somebody sits there and says, hey, you're not needed, all of a sudden it's like, well, how important is my job?
Right.
So I think, and then, you know, when it got bad was when the ratings came out for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started turning into somebody. It wasn't so much during the filming. It was
Okay.
afterwards when I hear, hey, the show's doing great. Hey, at that time I was not even with Brett. I was with Brian Setzer, and I was with the Stray Cats and ZZ Top
Mm-hmm.
and the Pretenders, and we were out on tour. And Brett was actually playing in Chicago, so I slipped away on a day off, and I went down and talked to Brett, and he goes, number one, the show's number one. And of course, with everything, Brett's number one. It's the biggest selling crowd ever. And,
Right.
you know, but ironically, it did have really good ratings, and
Mhm.
people started to talk. And I'll never forget, I was sitting with Brian Setzer and Billy Gibbons in Chicago, and this guy walks up and he goes, I'm sorry to bother you. I don't mean to bother. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, Billy, Brian, what are they?
Yep.
He goes, can we get our picture with you? And I'm looking at Brian and Billy, and I'm like, are you guys going to do it? And they both look at me and they're looking at you, dickhead. And I was like, what? Are you serious? That was the first time. And I was like, wait a minute, you know, and as things got bigger, that's when I started to turn into the other John.
Okay.
Because, you know, touring around with Brett and seeing the success of the show and seeing the crowds get bigger
Mm-hmm.
and having people recognize me everywhere. You know, there were times that people would go up to Brett, hey, where's Big John? And it would piss him off,
Uh-huh.
you know, but I kind of got an ego. It was really
Right,
weird. I let it get away from me. And, you know, everybody that was closest to me kind of drifted away from me.
Mhm.
Either that or I drifted away from them, should I say. They didn't drift away from me. They were very happy that it was happening,
Right.
but they saw which direction I was going, and they kind of like, okay, let him do his thing. He'll outgrow this.
Well,
You know.
it feels good.
It does.
It feels good.
It
I mean,
does.
even, you know, in my little experience with him, I'm shit. I know that. I'm fucking nobody. But like on the fucking cruise, all these people, Izzy, can I get your picture? I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like after the Kiss Jam, or actually it was after the Kiss Jam. It was one of the guys that played, and he said, this made the cruise.
Yep.
Made it worthwhile. And he had me sign his guitar with everybody else. I'm like, I mean, yeah,
It's
inside I'm
surreal.
eating it up, but on the outside I'm like, who the fuck am I?
Exactly. And that's what I said. That's what I kept thinking in the beginning. I'm like, holy shit. All I wanted to do was be friends with the guys in the band. I didn't want to be one of the band,
Right.
you know? And
Well, I do, but
well, do you remember the story you told on your podcast about how when you used to interview, you'd be down in the locker room and on the fields
Yeah.
with the baseball? Same thing. When the bands would come around and they knew me, not because I toured with them, not because of music. You know, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and I got people playing. I'll never forget Lincoln Park. The guys from Lincoln Park heard that I lived in Nashville and that I was at the show. And Chester, Mike Amato was their production manager. And anybody who knows anything about the backside of music, the behind the scenes, knows who Mike Amato is.
Uh-huh.
Mike happened to mention to Chester that I was coming to the show. I almost shit that the guys from Lincoln Park and their wives are waiting in the green room for me.
right.
And I walk in and I'm like, guys, it's a pleasure to meet you. The wives are like, oh my God. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, it's like I got a call. God, was it? I think it was Saturday night. There was something was going on, some kind of festival or some kind of party or whatever, and there was with basically the Monsters crowd was there.
Yep.
Like Lisa Sunday, I'm sure you know who she is if you saw her.
Absolutely.
Yep. And did you have a chance to meet Doc Dennis Waldron? We call him Doc Heeb. Karabi gave him that name 2 years ago.
Oh shit!
But-
If he was hanging around with Karabi, I probably met him.
Yeah, he was doing photos this year.
Oh yeah. I know. who
Him and
you're
his
talking
wife Angie, yeah.
about. Yeah.
And he called me. He was a little bit under the bottle. But he's like, dude, more people here know who you are than know who Luke Carl is. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I got you.
sorry. It froze up. I'm moving. I'm getting some coffee. No, it's weird. I know exactly what you're talking about because all of a sudden I'm like, what do you know? And then Larry comes up with the concept of this cruise, and he goes, "We'd like you to co-host a cruise with Eddie Trunk, and I'm like, what? All of a sudden, I'm like, I'm on this Monsters Rock cruise.
Right.
And, it's like it was a very strange transition to go from behind the scenes security, even though we were visible before this show and before the popularity. Sorry,
That's all right.
before the show and before the popularity, I was always visible, but never a point of focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the show happens, and the hype started, and you walk into places, dude. I've walked. It was funny because when I was with Brett, we were in Nashville, and he had gotten invited to the CMA Awards. He didn't want to go. Go down there, check it out, see who's there, find out what's going on. Maybe I'll go somewhere afterwards. What? Dude, these are artist seats.
Right.
Go. I was like, okay, cool. I got a kick out of it. I'm thinking, hell yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm sitting in a freaking chair. Next to me is Carrie Underwood, Jeffrey Steele, who's a big country writer, all these other people. And everybody's coming up shaking my hand. I'm like, this is not happening. This is crazy. Now maybe somebody will understand what I mean when I say you let your ego get away from you.
Yeah.
Because when these guys who are selling 30, 40, 50 million albums a year, Kenny Chesney walks up and says, "Hey, John, how's it been?" And I'm like, "You remember me?" He's like, "How the fuck could I forget you?"
I felt that way just hanging with Jeff LaBar.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not anything degrading towards Jeff LaBar. I mean, fuck, it's Cinderella. I mean, what the fuck?
Exactly.
But it's like he knows who he's a friend of mine now. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
That's exactly it. And living in Nashville was great because I never dreamed of the day when I would be going over to Eric's and Jeff's, and we'd all meet up for Halloween and Halloween parties, and Eric and Henry's birthday, and we'd do cookouts. And I'm sitting here thinking, how did I get to this point? This is so cool. Because I was happy just knocking on the bus door, asking permission to come up and hang out with the guys.
I was happy just going through the fucking line to meet people as a fan.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was just glad. I was happy that when they showed up, hey, John.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he knows my name. He remembered me.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, Karabi only knows me from the Mankini, but it's a whole nother story.
Karabi knows me from breaking into his house a couple of times. he always had Jägermeister hidden. And
that doesn't shock me.
So I didn't break in. Let me rephrase that. He would be upstairs, and he'd hear the door, and he's like, "Who is it?" I'm like, "Hey, John, you better leave me some."
Oh, fucking crab. He cracks me up.
I love him.
Do you still talk to Brett? I mean, have you talked to him since? I mean, because I know he's got all this medical stuff going on. I just don't know if you've talked to him, if you've reached out, or.
I try to stay as far away from that as possible.
Okay, I understand.
I do talk to Brett on a friendship basis.
Right.
But I don't want to get involved with any of his. If he says something to me on the phone about his health conditions or anything,
no, I'm not asking. I'm not asking that. No. I would never ask that.
We talk on a personal level,
right?
Like things happen, and I'll say, "Hey, God, I worry,"
right?
But I don't reach out to him as much as I used to. I mean, if you ask Jeff, and see, this is one of the things that I realized when it was getting too bad. I'm hanging out with Jeff and Eric, and it's cookout at Eric's house. The phone would ring, and I would literally run away from everybody. I'm not even on the road; it's time off,
right?
And I'd run away from everybody to answer the phone. Oh my God, it's Brett! I got to answer this. They were like, "What about us?"
Right.
And so it's taken me a long time to realize I potentially fucked up a lot of friendships and really close friendships, because I couldn't put the phone down. So now that I'm married and I'm not as involved with music as I used to be, it's still like crack. It's there, and I want to call all the time. But now there's a different set of people that I call. I call AJ. I call Jake. I call Larry. I call once in a while, I'll talk to an old friend, Joe Anthony, who worked with me and Larry back in the Rat days. But instead of constantly being on the phone with Brett and having to do stuff, it's more like now it's getting back to that point where it's like, these are my true friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't
Oh,
want
absolutely.
anything. They don't want anything from me other than, I guess, friendship and the occasional, hey, we're doing a show. Do you want to come out?
Right. And God, I love AJ.
I love AJ to death.
Oh
you know,
my God.
when Larry asked me to do the cruise, he goes, "You're going to meet AJ. He's a former Blue Angel and Navy diver and this and that." I'm thinking, okay, this guy's going to be like just a machine.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, I was just picturing a dick and everything. And I got down there, and the minute I met him, we looked each other in the eye, and like that, I was like, this guy's going to be cool as hell.
Oh yeah.
And my wife fell in love with him, and I think she wishes she had him more than me sometimes. So,
And God, he hired me to work at the Kiefer show.
Yep.
I was merch bitch, and fuck, just hanging out with him all day long, and then being business,
Yep.
and then going back to hanging out after the show. It was like, God, this guy, fuck, he's just a riot, just a fucking riot.
he's one of the, he's got it. He did what I wish I could have done.
Mhm.
He took both sides of it because, you know, being out on stage with Queensryche and doing his thing,
Right.
and being able to fall back into that security position and not be so visible,
Mhm.
he got it. He did what I wish I would have done because I probably still would have been working.
Right.
But he is. Let me tell you, AJ and I. He's got some military experience. He's got some things that he's dealt with. I have mine, and I'm telling you, with AJ, a brotherhood has formed. I mean, we talk to each other all the time about everything. You know, Brett went to work for Brett for a few weeks.
Yeah, he
And
did.
He called me. He flat out told Brett, he said, "I'm not doing this to replace John." He goes, "I'm not doing this without John's permission. I want John to know." And I said, "Dude, I'm honored that you would even ask, but don't think that our friendship would ever change." I said, "Let me just give you
Right.
some advice." And I gave him some advice as far as how to deal with different situations and
Mhm.
what to look for and what not to look for. And I said, "I don't have to teach you anything. This is just a personal thing." And, I was honored that he would say that.
Oh, absolutely. All right. I got to ask this. Do you get sick of people asking you if it's a wig?
I'll answer that question right now. It's the most expensive hair extensions you can buy.
Because I was gonna ask, is it a skullet or is it a wig? So
it's definitely
is
not
it
real.
attached? Is it attached to the bandana?
No.
Okay. So it's physically attached to his head, but it's not attached to the bandana. Because you
Exactly.
see the pictures of him in the hospital bed with the bandana. It's like it's got to be a wig. It's hair extensions. All right. Finally, it's.
I'm
been
going to get in a
answered.
world of shit for saying that, but I don't care. I'm not.
Dude, what happened with the Bounty Hunter show?
It sucked. it completely sucked.
Okay.
Here's my vision was, at that time, my vision was to take a show and not have it be like Dog. No,
Yep.
no malintent or no whatever, no malfeasance or no no discontent meant towards him. I'm trying to sound educated.
Disrespect.
No disrespect towards him. But I didn't want that kind of a show.
Right.
And the production team, I thought, okay, maybe while this Rock of Love thing is still hot, maybe I can make a little bit of money and keep going, keep the ball rolling. Well, we did all the filming in Salt Lake and in the surrounding areas in Utah. And when we were filming, I could see where it was going. You know what I mean? I could really see how this was going to play out. What happened in editing was something completely different.
Okay.
And I told the guy who did it, I said, he's out and I'm going out to Hollywood. I'm going to get the show sold to a network. And I'm calling the people ahead of time. I was like, don't you even dare buy this fucking thing. It sucks. And he's like, who do you know in Hollywood? And I'm like, oh, I'll get you in people's offices, but I'm calling them ahead of time saying, don't you dare.
Right.
Don't even. And they would look at it and they were like, are you fucking kidding me? because the first season it had changed 3 different times because of sponsorship and everything else. I was working for a bail enforcement or a bail bonds company who basically turned their back on the whole production. So we had to go. So they're crooked as hell. I'm not going to mention their name because I'll get sued.
Oh, that's fine.
But so we had to go find sponsorship somewhere else. So we had to change the characters and the character scenarios and, you know, now granted, they were all licensed recovery agents, every one of them, because that was one of the things that the state of Utah demanded. If you're going to do a show like this, everyone must be licensed. And whoever you go after better be a legitimate, there better be warrants and everything. This better be legitimate. Don't make the state of Utah look bad. So there was a lot of input from a lot of different organizations as far as how this was going to go. And when I felt like I lost creative control, everything changed, because then the show became about the chick he was banging at the time and her nose job and how she got teased in high school and this and that and her fake tits. And I'm like, hey, dude, it's my name that's on the fucking banner. I'm like, what about my backstory? And no shit, this is what it was. Hi, I'm Big John. I work for Brett, or formerly from Brett Michaels, blah, blah, blah. I was in the Marines cut. But yet we're telling the story about how she got made fun of as a kid because of her hook. And, and let me tell you something, it was a huge nose. I would have been making fun of her too. So.
Was it like the Jew hook?
Yeah, bigger.
Okay.
Bigger.
Wow.
It was like W.C. Fields on a chick.
And, when I was doing my research, I came across a press release that you had put out about reverse racism.
What was that about?
It was something about where they wanted to go with more of an African American for.
Oh.
Yeah. Please talk about that a little bit.
That was, how can I do this without, I don't care. Let them come after me. 51 Minds in Endemol, the people that did Rock of Love. I went to them and I went to some of their people and I gave them the concept of this show. This is before I even considered doing mine. And I said, look, this would be, they asked me, do you have any ideas? Because, once you get done with the shit, your mind starts rolling because now you know how reality television works and how they edit. So I'm like, hey, what if you took a show like, used to be a show called, God, what was it? It wasn't DEA. It was something like that where it's time lapsed. It shows how long they sit on the buildings waiting for these guys and all the work that gets put into it. And, you got the first 48, kind of like that.
Right.
I was like, what if we took a bail enforcement show and made it that way? Not just the chase like Dog does, but we show all the work that goes in behind it. Great idea. Let's put it on paper. Let's get it going, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, when it came time to put everything together, they said, well, we're going to hold off for a little bit. After they had all the ideas, because they were asking me for input. How does this work? How does this work? How does this work? How does this work? I didn't get what they were doing. They were asking me how the shit works. And then once it came time to really do it and start paying people and collect, make the show, okay, we're going to put this on hold. Well, I said, okay, you put it on hold. I'm going to do it. And then that's where we got with the other production company and started filming. So then I went back to him. I said, look, I have a finished product. Do you want to take? Now, this is when I was really trying to sell the first one, and it was really good. We had it time lapsed. We had everything. I can't remember the name of the show. It was like the first 48 where you got the time lapse.
Yeah.
And it shows real time. Shit, I've been sitting on this house for 2 days, and the guy hasn't even been here. And shows this pile of cigarettes that are outside of the car. They're like a small pyramid. And then I went to them and they said, well, we saw it and everything. We love it. But here's the problem. There's no African-Americans in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn around and we're going to try to do a show where it's all black people instead of white. Because if we start going in one direction, which they did, as soon as Rock of Love was over with, then they went back to the ghetto TV.
Yep.
Whatever the hell they
Flavor
did.
Flav and all that shit. Yeah.
All that shit.
Yeah.
So they went to black TV, I guess, or ethnic TV or whatever. They went for a different genre.
Demographic. Yeah.
And I said, well, what are you going to do? Are we going to redo Soul Man? Because I'm not C. Thomas Howell,
Right.
and I'm not taking a bunch of tanning pills.
Yeah.
So it turned out that they wound up going in a different direction, and it didn't work, because what happened was the state of California said they put a kibosh on it, from what I understand. They were like, absolutely not. And you got a bunch of actors who don't understand this is how it works. And all of a sudden it turns into it might as well be Roadhouse. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was trying to put a real story out there. And then when it came time to when they finally got finished, after all the bullshit with the sponsors and everything else, I looked at the finished product. I was like so embarrassed, because they aired it in Utah on their local 13 or whatever, and it went all around Utah. And I swear to God, dude, I walked around and I hung my head. I was like, I'm so embarrassed. I was like, I can't walk around for the next 10 years with my head down.
Wow.
So I was calling people. I was like, look, if this guy shows up or if he calls you, save yourself the time and the trouble. Don't even entertain the offer. I would rather it sit on a shelf and in a can than not. It is not good.
Is that why you got out of Utah and went to Hawaii?
No. The reason I got out of Hawaii is because I was working at a company in Utah, and a friend of mine moved there the previous December, and he was a lot like me. He, wasn't headed in any real direction. Just wasn't happy with the 9-to-5 grind, and he got a job with the Four Seasons Resorts in Lanai, on the island of Lanai. And I'm watching his Facebook page in the transition, and I mean, literally, he went from mediocre Mike to happy all the time to smiling. And I'm looking at these pictures. I'm like, well, no shit, you're smiling. And he goes, hey, a security position's opened up here. You're going to start off low man on a totem pole, of course, but this is what it pays. And that was no kick in the pants. It's more than I ever made in music business. And I was like, huh. So sent in the application, got a phone call immediately. He pushed it through to the HR department, got a phone call within a couple of days. And I told my wife, I said, hey, we're moving into Hawaii at the end of the month. She's like, what? I said, we're moving to Hawaii. And best thing I ever did, because, at this point in my life, the best thing I ever did.
Right.
Because not only now do I have an open door policy with the Four Seasons, I went in there, did my work at my work ethic. They let me, you weren't micromanaged. You got to do what you were due. And I like to interact with people. So being in security, I could walk around a resort, see people, hang out with them, talk with them. What do you need? Is there anything wrong? What can I do to make your stay better? And just being me and being social.
Right.
Anybody who knows me knows what I'm talking about. The feedback started to come back to the Four Seasons Resorts. John was great. John was great. John was great. And all of a sudden they're like, where the hell did you come from? I said, listen, when you deal with the shit that I've dealt with in my life and the people that I've dealt with, this is easy.
Right.
And actually I enjoyed doing it. And I do have dreams of one day going back there. Right now, the reason I came back to Cincinnati is because my mom's 71 and she's getting older. She doesn't have anybody. And it was just one of those things that you can always go back to Hawaii. You can't get your mom back. And I figured I'd come back and spend some time with her. But I made a great impression with the Four Seasons, and even the director of operations and the manager of the resort came up to me as I was leaving and said, whether it's here or anywhere within the Four Seasons organization, if you decide that you want to come back or go to a different one worldwide, we are your references.
Wow.
My supervisor in the security department, his name was Chad Campbell. I told him, I said, I have every ambition on coming back here. I do. I said, but my mom comes first.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the greatest things about Hawaii, is because where I lived on that small island, there's only 3,000 people on the island. It's not Waikiki touristy Hawaii. It's not Maui touristy Hawaii. This is as real as Hawaii gets. And anybody, I had a bad feeling going in, because everyone told me white people are not accepted. They call you haoles. You're an outsider. You are the minority there. I got there and I was just me. my wife and I, we were just John and Lonnie. I didn't try to be somebody. Never brought up the TV show. They found out months later, and they were like, "How come you never told us?" I said, "Because I didn't want that to be the premise of our friendship,
Right, exactly.
and or the basis of our friendship." And so, the native Hawaiians and the people of the island actually took me in, which is unheard of. Started teaching me Hawaiian customs. Started teaching me the traditions, and all I had to do was pay attention and ask. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the problem. Nobody ever asked. They just assume, you know, and I wanted to learn. And so I had a lot of locals and native Hawaiians teaching me things and telling me things and telling me how to properly do things and how to show respect to elders. And I was like, wow, that was the hardest part about leaving, because finally I belonged to something that wasn't a give-take relationship.
Right.
You know, in music, it's like,
what can you do for me now?
I'll blow you if you
Yep.
give me a pass.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm not going to here twist my arm.
Woohoo, boobs!
Exactly. But it was really cool because I've always admired the Hawaiian culture and customs. And I got to experience it for a couple years, and I wouldn't take that time back for the life of me. But then I come here, and this is where your age starts. You start feeling old.
Right.
I come back here, and I'm working in this place. It's Belterra Park Casino. It's a racetrack, horse racing track with a casino inside of it, and I'm doing overnights there, and working in their security division, and I'm talking to this kid Jordan, and he's funny as hell. This is somebody you need to get up on stage. If you 19 years old working there, he's got me on the floor laughing. And then he says, he goes, "You said you worked with Kid Rock?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, I worked for him for a couple of years." He goes, "My buddy's dad worked with Kid Rock. Do you know Donnie Floyd?" And I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I'm like, "Hold on. I'm hanging out with one of Donnie Floyd's son's friends." I was like,
wow.
"Oh God." I was like, "This is bullshit." I was like, I feel like the old man. I mean, this kid's 19 telling me, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, how old am I?
Yeah, no shit. No shit.
But he's a good kid. He's going to go far. But I told him, I said, you need to go on stage. And I wish I had the power and the ability to do that, because this kid, he goes right off the cuff, but it just makes you feel old when you're sitting there and you're like, you're 19. And I start thinking back to when I was 19. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, my buddy's dad." And I'm like, "Your buddy's dad is who I hang out with?" I'm like, "Isn't this kind of weird? This is like kind of
absolutely
stalkerish pedophile shit."
Exactly. Hey, and at least in the Natty, you can still get Spam.
Exactly. I love Spam. I never thought that I would eat it until I got over there, and sure as shit, it turned out something that I loved.
And you actually learned how to cook it right, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
All right, brother. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
No. I hope this is
good. Dude, I'm not going to lie to you. I've interviewed a lot of people. This is top 5 easily. This is a lot of fun, man.
No, I just hope everybody gets busy and comes out to the Monsters Cruise this year. And
yeah,
that's our little annual party. And
that's right. It's like a family reunion every year.
It is. It's so good.
Just for not just us. I mean, the cruisers too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny because you see the same cruisers over and over.
Yeah.
And it turns into like this little family. It's like, I wonder if Lisa's going to be there. I wonder if so and so's going to be there. I wonder if who's Tony, the one that dresses all crazy.
Yeah,
all the time.
Tony. He dressed up like for the Kiss Jam. He dressed up like Gene Simmons.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, that's what it's about, man.
Exactly. I go on the cruise and I'm looking for Tony. And it's funny because Tony came up to me 2 years ago and he goes, "Does it bother you that?" He goes, How do you speak so freely about being sober?" I was like, "I just tell people that that's how it is." I said,
right.
He's like, "Does it bother you? Do you ever want to drink because you talk about it?" I said, "No, that makes me not want to." I said, "If I can give you a piece of," because he had just gotten sober. And I said, "I don't go to AA meetings. I don't do any of that. I just made a promise to myself and my wife." I said, "The easiest thing I can tell you is if you're a man of your word, make a promise to yourself and somebody that you care about. And, that way it's always in the back of your mind. You look at that beer, it's like, oh, fuck, you made a promise, And right. I said, if you're a man of your word, you will not break you're making that promise to yourself, And
absolutely.
he comes up to me now all the time and he's like, thank you. I'm like, oh my God, dude, you don't have to thank me.
Fucking Tony's
I'm like,
great. I love that
I'm
guy.
like, it's just good to see you.
Absolutely. All right, before we go, I have to go back to the wrestling.
Uh-huh.
Who are you in the ring with? I got to know names of people you were in the ring with.
I did stuff with Al Snow.
Okay.
Mick Foley did some stuff here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
A
Bang,
great guy.
I'll have to get you back just to tell Mick Foley stories.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. He was just here, and I went down, and I was trying to get a hold of him, and we talked for probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes on the air here in Cincinnati. He was doing local radio because he's doing this tour around the country, just talk tour. And I called in after the show, and I was talking to him. I was like, Mick, I said, I don't know if you remember me. I said, this is John from HWA and blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, my God, Big John, what are you doing? He goes, oh, just to let you know, my wife loved the show. I was like, fuck. It all comes back to the damn show.
That's right.
No, he's a great guy. And, you know, and it's just, we did things with a lot of people, especially with the Pillman event. We brought Stone Cold in. We brought, God rest his soul, Chris Benoit. You know, God, who else came? There were all kinds of Ric Flair. God, there were so many people that were involved with our little things. Dean Malenko, all, you know, you name it, they were there. Me and Bubba Ray Dudley were trying to get something together after the show, and after I had left Brett, we were trying to get something together to make a reunion and literally beat the shit out of each other. It never came to fruition. But I wouldn't mind taking a few shots from Bubba Ray and Devon if that ever happened.
Hey, you're all still breathing. You never know.
Exactly.
You never know. All right, John,
Great
man.
guys.
Dude, this is an absolute blast. You are welcome on the show at any time. If you ever
brother.
come out to L.A., I got a microphone for you. Come in,
Perfect.
hang out in studio, and we'll tell some more stories, brother.
You know what? I'll find some videos and stuff at some point, and I'll get them to you.
I just want. I just got to see
have videos
photos
laying
of the
around
gimmick.
here.
I gotta see
yeah.
photos.
I have
You
those.
gotta get those up.
I have those. You know what? I have those. I just kind of put that behind me. I got them laying around in a box somewhere.
Dude,
And,
scan them, get them up. You gotta get
I
that
will.
out there.
You know what? I'm off tomorrow. I don't have anything to do. I'll get them out there, and we'll see what happens. Just remember, those were the early days.
Hey, absolutely, man. That's fucking awesome, John. Dude, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you.
All right, brother.
All right.
Take
See
care.
you in a few months.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Big John. What an interview. What an interview. They're extensions. So we were both wrong. It's not his real hair. Everybody's wrong. It's not his real hair. It's not a wig. They're extensions. There you go. We finally got the answer to what is going on with Bret Michaels' hair. Yay! But all in honesty, what an amazing interview. John was amazing. Cannot wait to have him back on the show. Don't forget, you can check out the show on iTunes. It is Izzy Presley on iTunes. Just search for it. Then subscribe to Another Effing Podcast and, leave feedback. 5 stars. All the kind of good stuff. Spreaker.com/user/Izzy Presley. And, of course, the Facebook.com/Another Effing Podcast. And Twitter, Izzy_Presley. Check out the RockstarLeatherworks.com. Great people over there. We love their product. RockstarLeatherworks.com. And, of course, if you want to support the show, it is izzy.presley@gmail.com for your PayPal information. Next week, I don't know who the guest is, but I'm working on something. I got something up my sleeve. You know I always do. And we will see you then. Don't forget, everybody, I do love you all. It is Another Fucking Podcast.